Hey everyone, it's time to talk about some more creepy things in Kingdom Hearts. In my previous two videos I mentioned quite a few topics. On the screen you can see just some of the main points that I addressed. And in this video I'd like to talk about some more topics in a different format to before. And I'm also going to include some comments from a post that I made, asking people what they thought was creepy in Kingdom Hearts. And this will be the final video in the series, unless the next Kingdom Hearts game comes out and is especially creepy, but for now this is going to be it. To start off with, I want to reiterate on something I talked about last time, and that's Xehanort's experiments, Apprentice Xehanort particularly. We know how disturbing it is about his experiments on people, them losing their hearts and even their sanity, and being confined to the bowels of the castle in cells. It's all pretty messed up. But I didn't really talk about how it affects Kairi, and as this comment points out, the trauma and the coping mechanism of her losing her memory, as we see in Melody Memory when she gets chased by Heartless, and then kidnapped by Xehanort, put into a machine, and eventually sent to a different land, a different place. Now I'm not sure whether this is a result of just being put in that machine, or if this is like a dissonance thing where her mind doesn't want to remember the traumatic experience or it just blocks it out. Either way, it's pretty unsettling. On that note, what else did Apprentice Xehanort do? Well, he turned all his fellow apprentices into nobodies, and one of them was Ienzo, who was just a child, like not even Isa and Lee age, like he was very young, and you just see his body on the floor in this DDD cutscene. And it's really messed up to think about. He grew up as a nobody. He ages, I mean the nobodies clearly age, and he's brought up by other nobodies who have lost a lot of their humanity. You know, look at Vexen. That's a pretty rough childhood to have, and it explains why he is the way he is in Chain of Memories. And that leads us on to a character with another disturbing existence, and that's Riku Replica. He's not a real person, but he's trying to convince himself and everyone else that he is real. He's living an illusion, a lie. His life isn't real. He's being manipulated by the likes of Marluxia, who himself can be a bit creepy too. I mean, look at the way he whispers in Sora's ear. It's also a callback to Riku himself in KH1, how he was manipulated by villains, being used by a council of creepy Disney villains, and then being possessed by Ansem, who is also very creepy in that game.
Let your heart, your being become darkness itself.
And this continues into KH3 as well, especially that scene where you see Riku Replica rip Dark Riku out of the body, and then the body just ends up on the floor looking a bit creepy. And the way it's presented and how the darkness kind of flows out, a bit like how blood might spurt out, you know, it's a bit of that in there. I always found that to be a slightly disturbing sight. Oh, and since we're on Chain of Memories, here's a quick point to make about Sora in Castle Oblivion. The more he loses his memory and becomes obsessed with Naminé, the more aggressive and unfriendly he is towards Donald and Goofy and Jiminy. And it's quite disturbing to see Sora like that because he's usually rather cheerful and happy. And I just wanted to add it in there because I didn't quite mention it last time when I talked about Castle Oblivion. I also liked this mention of Riku and Vanitas' meat suit, which is a funny name for it, but it makes sense. It looks fleshy and like muscle, right? It's quite a disturbing thing to wear. And Vanitas himself, we may as well talk a bit about him. He's creepy. I mean, listen to his laugh. Or the fact he wears a mask, you know, there's that phobia. It's imaginatively named maskophobia, when someone's wearing a mask and you can't see their face. So I could see that potentially being a thing with people. And add his voice to that and some of the things he says.
Make me.
Yeah, Vanitas is definitely one of the most creepy characters. But hey, why don't we take a break from all this creepy stuff and go to an amusement park? This place seems quite nice, quite cheerful. Oh, that's a bit weird, but hey, I guess it makes sense. There would be clowns and that sort of thing here, and it's not too bad. Maybe let's just go inside. I mean, it looks pretty fun in here, and well, the doors opened rather aggressively there. I never liked those sun and moon faces. I always found those to be a bit strange, but it is what it is. You do see them a lot. I wonder what's down here. Nope. Ah, fine, alright, we'll go down. Oh my goodness, why would they put a clown like this here? I mean, I know why it fits. It's just, it's got its mouth opening and closing. Thank goodness it doesn't make a noise or say something, right? But the eyes following you, that is just horrible. This is one of the creepiest visual things in Kingdom Hearts, I reckon. It's a good thing this corridor isn't darker. Can you imagine his eyes glowing and watching you? You jump and they still follow you. They just track you wherever you go. It's just really weird. I don't like this thing. It's something that other people have mentioned to add as a creepy thing, of course, because, yeah, the clown. I had to include the clown. How could I not do this list without it? While we're in DDD, let's talk about nightmares. Most of them in this game are not creepy. They're very colourful animals. Okay, yeah, that's not disturbing. There is that one jump scare moment you get from the Spelican. It's not really a jump scare, but it screams at you. So that's a bit of something. But the most disturbing nightmare in this game is probably the anti-black coat. It's the nightmare that's trapping Sora. And it actually looks like a nightmare. It reminds me of some of the ones I had as a kid when I would see a hooded man with no face. This one's got eyes, but that doesn't really improve it in any way. We've got these two little red eyes. And then the music being the dread of night. It's an effective name. The music isn't really creepy, it's more of an action piece, but the name is quite cool. It's just quite a mysterious thing. We know why it exists, it makes sense. But it's just one of the more unusual random inclusions that we have in DDD and the whole series, really. And while the dread of night might not be that creepy, something that is unsettling is when the music is turned off in the game. I mentioned this before, and I wanted to talk about one more example of it, and that's in Cage 3, outside the mansion. When you first leave the mansion, just before the cutscene with Ansem and Xemnas, it's dead silent, except for the sound effects. It's very strange. And if you've watched the trailers before you play the game, you'll know that Ansem and Xemnas is about to appear, so there's anticipation for that. But if you haven't, you don't know what's about to happen. You just run outside and then the music stops. A little bit strange. It's quite effective. I'm glad they chose to do it there. I feel like the Twilight Town music would have been too gentle and wouldn't have built up to that moment quite effectively enough. And while we're here, can we talk about the mansion? This place just feels wrong. An old mansion is already a creepy concept. It's a classic horror trope. And something else that's quite classic is haunting, especially by a girl. And we have this here as well. We have Namine in the window. And yeah, if you took a trip to the mansion and you saw a girl looking out the window, it would be creepy. It would definitely be creepy. But you have the mansion itself, the strange garden you can't go out to, the unicorn symbols, especially this one unicorn head, which is looking at you a bit intimidating. Or I guess alicorn, someone mentioned to me. I don't know my fantasy animals, okay? The pods, of course, we have to mention the pods. I mean, they're quite unsettling. Why are there so many of them? Why is one say it's been used before? Is this actually going to link to the story? Could do something to do with the mobile game plot. It's not like Ansem the Wise built this place, he used it, but he didn't make all this, right? At least he certainly didn't make the above area. Why is there a table that's been smashed in? Why are there paintings representing worlds in Cage 1? This whole place is just full of mystery. And when you have a mystery, it can be quite unsettling to think about. The fear of the unknown, right? That's definitely a thing. But the main creepy thing here was definitely the idea of Namine looking out the window, especially for the simulated Twilight Town, where they don't know who that is, and it is just a mysterious ghost girl. Another ghost is Scar's ghost. This one is strange. It's not a heartless, but it's a lingering darkness that's manifested because of the doubt in Simba's heart. But it would be creepy. Imagine your uncle who killed your father and tried to kill you is now chasing you around even after he's dead. And Scar himself as well. He turns into a Heartless due to anger and jealousy, as Pete puts it. But disturbingly for a Heartless, he shows quite a lot of intelligence. He can talk even after he's a Heartless. The only other person who's been able to do that is Xehanort when he became Ansem's Seeker of Darkness. Sora was intelligent, but he couldn't talk as a shadow. So it's like, why is Scar able to do this? What's with the ghost? I think they put a lot of emphasis on Scar because he's such a beloved Disney villain. They wanted to make sure he had the right treatment. But it is creepy to think about how powerful he is in terms of darkness. How much darkness there really is inside his heart, I guess. Another dark entity that isn't a Heartless is the Dark Figure, or the Guardian, or the monster behind you. Whatever you want to call it, Terranort made this thing, and then Ansem adopted it, and he's the much cooler dad, as we all know. It acts as a heart container for Terra's heart, somewhere to store it. It's a pretty messed up idea. This is someone's identity, this is who someone is, and you're just storing it away, like, yeah, just stuff his heart inside this dark monster. According to the Cage 3 Ultimania, it bounces between Terranort and the Guardian. The Dark Figure itself is creepy looking. It's very monstrous and demonic. It's got bandages over its mouth, which is a disturbing image. And it's even worse when Terra takes control and he tears the bandages off, and then he gasps and you see that tongue. Yeah, that's always been a creepy moment in Cage 3, when the Guardian opens its mouth. It's pretty effective. Knowing that Terra was trapped inside this is pretty messed up, especially when you go back and fight Ansem in the games. I'm sure we all remember that cutscene in DDD where the Guardian reaches out to Riku. Looking back on that now, yeah, that's quite something to think about, huh? And Terra wasn't the only one to suffer, of course. His friend Aqua, she had to suffer in the Realm of Darkness for 10 years. Now sure, there isn't really a concept of time there, but it's still pretty disturbing. And the Realm of Darkness in 0.2, while it's not as dark as I would like, there is still a lot of creepy imagery. For one, seeing the 3 worlds from BBS, Castle of Dreams, Enchanted Dominion and the Dwarf Woodlands, they were represented in the Realm of Darkness because of course they've been taken over by the Heartless. So you see their remains here, frozen in time. The town square is just frozen, you see the water in the fountain. I think the Castle of Dreams looming over everything, it's a very foreboding sight. It's such an effective way to use a Disney property as well. And then we also have Maleficent's castle and it looks completely dead. Also in this final area of the Forest of Thorns, there's no music once again, so just something I wanted to point out again there. The world within isn't quite so creepy, but it does have Phantom Aqua, which is a disturbing self-reflection. It makes you think, is Aqua going to lose her sanity and turn into this? Well, she kind of does in Cage 3, but that's more because Ansem fires a big ball of darkness at her. Oh, and that ball of darkness is fired by the Guardian, so Terra probably witnessed that happening, by the way, unless he was in Terranor at the time, which he might have been. And one of the most creepy bits of imagery in this game is when all the dark sides are summoning these orbs. Because you know those orbs are going to end up in the Realm of Light and destroy worlds. We saw one in Destiny Islands. It's a real apocalyptic sight, isn't it? And speaking of the Destiny Islands one, think of that from the other side as just an average citizen. Your entire home is being destroyed in front of your eyes and everyone's screaming for help, and you see people just turning into Heartless everywhere and buildings being destroyed. It's almost like a hurricane really, but this isn't Florida and there's a lot more shadowy monsters. Then we have to address the fact that Sora's mother and I presume father go through all of this. And then, after Sora goes to sleep at the end of Chain of Memories, they forget about him like everyone else does. Now, imagine forgetting your child exists, but you have a bedroom in your house with a bunch of children's stuff in it. Like, that's pretty weird, right? That would be quite creepy. You'd be like, why have we got this stuff? And then when Sora wakes up, they remember him again, but he's still missing. So they remember that they have a lost child. And then he eventually comes home, at least after Cage 2, only to go off on another adventure and go missing again. Yeah, it's a bit weird to think about Sora's parents, and basically parents in general in Kingdom Hearts. I suppose that's why they tend to just ignore them. Well, if Sora can't get presents from his parents, I guess there's always Santa Claus. I mean, he can't be creepy, right? Oh, well, I guess the idea of Santa is a little bit creepy in real life. I mean, he knows if every child has been bad or good, okay. And in Kingdom Hearts, he knows Sora, Dawn, and Goofy, despite the fact that he's from a different world. So he knows different worlds exist, and I guess he can travel to them. That makes him genuinely one of the most powerful entities in Kingdom Hearts. Like what on earth? Santa could just travel to different worlds like that? That's actually a bit creepy to think about. Maybe his Heartless would be super powerful after all. Another thing I hadn't really thought about was this comment about the Port Royal screams. I hadn't seen the scene in a while, so I watched it back, and I get what you mean.
Something's up!
I think in any other scenario it wouldn't be a big deal, but we rarely get screams like that in Kingdom Hearts, so it is a bit of a surprise. I think mainly the creepiest thing about it is the first initial woman scream. That's just so shrill and sudden. And hey, if we look at Cage 3's Caribbean, you may get a feeling of dread from being under the water. It's that vast, deep ocean feeling. It's always a creepy thing to think about. Yeah, what if there is a giant fish down there? I mean, it's Pirates of the Caribbean. We have mythical monsters like the Kraken. And indeed, we do have a giant fish in the form of a Heartless. You can see above you can't go too deep. But it is a weird feeling because Dawn and Goofy don't come with you that far, so you're just alone in the deep ocean. Yeah, it's definitely a bit unsettling. And here's another comment about the deep ocean. Ursula's second arena in particular I'm looking at here because it takes place in this vast ocean. There's nothing around it other than Ursula herself, and it's not like she's much of a break from the creepiness because she's a tentacled woman telling you that you're not very tasty. And since we're in Atlantica, I may as well mention the shark Glut and his jump scare where the music just suddenly hits and he snaps at you and you have that forced camera perspective inside the sunken ship. It's all very effective, and then the fact you've got to fight him afterwards, and on Proud he's not exactly a pushover. Another kind of weirdly empty looking area is in the seemingly cheerful Timeless River. Now, in Mickey's house we can see that it's Christmas, it's very joyful and nice, though I find it a bit strange that he has this deer head on the wall. I mean, I guess it's normal for that time period, but it's just funny thinking of the anthropomorphic animals that exist in this world, because it's almost like Mickey could have killed one that's actually talking and hung it up on his room, so hey, if you like a dark Mickey, there's an idea. But really what I wanted to talk about here was the windows. See, let's look outside this window. We can see it snowing outside, we can see a house in the distance, but it's alarmingly empty out there, isn't it? It's night, and it looks a little bit eerie and spooky. You can imagine something out there, right? You can imagine just something appears and just starts coming closer and closer to the house. And it seems like it's fairly desolate. I mean, yeah, there's houses around, but it's not like you're in a town or city. There's barely any light, and it being completely dark and a blizzard. Something comes and you just hear a knock at the door. Yeah, I could definitely imagine a horror scene taking place here. Now, speaking of Christmas, there's a guy who delivered... Wait, no, we already did that. So, speaking of things that get destroyed, Skylight Caelum is a bit weird to think about. It's this bustling haven for Keyblade wielders, but you have to think about the future and the past. See, obviously something happens to it that causes it to not exist anymore, right? There's a reason there's no Keyblade wielders from it anymore. And I guess maybe we'll see that in the mobile game, but also looking at the past as well. We know that this has originated from Daybreak Town in some way. There's this machine in Scala, it's used as part of a puzzle, but it shows how it's Daybreak Town and then it gets destroyed and we have this red sky. The Keyblade War, I assume, and then Scala rises up from it. And there's even more evidence, if you needed any, underwater when you fight Xehanort, because you can see the tower from Daybreak Town, upside down, just looming at you. It's quite eerie, and it definitely puts a dark and unsettling twist on this rather bright and beautiful looking world. And if we're looking at ancient things, I want to look at this comment about the Leechgrave, and how it feels like it could be something older as it devours other Heartless. That is certainly creepy behaviour for a Heartless. I don't really think it necessarily is something older, but it's still a creepy looking thing. I mean, it's Halloween Town, of course it is. The fact that the Tentaclaws are popping up throughout town, the Tentaclaws themselves are a little bit creepy as well. They remind me of those enemies in Dark Souls 2 a little bit, and they were always quite a disturbing one. Thanks to WheelJV2 for providing this footage, by the way. So yeah, the Leechgrave and the Tentaclaws, definitely one of the creepier Heartless designs in the series. And poor Roxas, he's had to deal with a lot of disturbing stuff, just like the Leechgrave. Just take this horrifying sentient candlestick here. But Roxas's time in the simulated Twilight Town is definitely one of the more disturbing parts of his life. I mean, he forgot all his memories. We've had that as a bit of a theme in this episode, a lot of losing memory. And just the horrible feeling that is. I mean, look at things like dementia, it's horrible. But living a fake life, slowly finding out that it's fake and everything you know isn't actually true, and Nominee telling you that you shouldn't exist, and eventually realizing you're going to have to go back to where you belong in Sora. Now we've got a good ending now, he can exist as his own person. But back then, to him, that was pretty much death. He was going to die. He had no idea that he could actually be reformed in some way, and even in Cage 2's plot where he lives inside Sora, it's not really a great fate when you were your own person before. So that's a bit disturbing, and it makes his final line in that prologue even better. Looks like my summer vacation is over. This is more of a sad than a creepy thing, but that's his pretty innocent way of saying, I'm going to die, essentially. Twilight Town was always a gentle and warm reprieve from the cold and sterile world that never was. I already talked about the world that never was last time, but there's something I didn't mention, and that's of course the crashed truck. It's a bit unnerving to think about. Why is there a crashed truck? Did a nobody try to drive? Was it trying to remember how to live? That's a bit sad and a bit creepy. And the fact they got all these scratch marks, I mean, this is where it's gone off the road, all these scratch marks, but I don't know, they don't quite seem to add up to what it would look like if something skidded like that. I don't know, it looks a little bit strange. I just have to wonder what happened here. There's one in DDD as well. Also, there's this comment that points out the moment that Zemlus's fake Kingdom Hearts gets destroyed and all the hearts fall, and the nobodies are desperately trying to grab them. It's quite a sinister sight because, as something I mentioned last time, they're the shells of people who have turned into Heartless. That's what's left of them, and they're desperate for hearts, but they can't have them. Now, we know that more powerful nobodies can grow hearts, but I doubt things like Dusks are able to do it. So to see them all grabbing for the hearts like this, it's just a bit of a disturbing image. There's a few more comments that I would like to address. It is a bit strange to think about something like the Dalmatian's house and how it obviously is a human house, but it's only the dogs that are in there. I guess this is more of a Traverse Town thing. I imagine Traverse Town has a lot of empty houses. Look at the small house. It's always a bit creepy to go into the small house when it's just Kairi in there and think, wow, it's a bit unsettling. Imagine if you were Kairi in the 3rd district outside, Heartless spawn. Maybe they only do when Sora's there, I don't know, but still. You know, she's alone in that room and outside is a dangerous 3rd district. I always thought that was a bit creepy. And just generally the idea that Traverse Town could have all these empty houses. It's a bit weird to think about. I'm kind of glad we can't go into them. And it calls back to something from the very first video, and that's the person in the hotel. That creepy voice from behind the curtain. Traverse Town is quite a relaxing place, but at the same time, there's some little bits of creepiness hidden in the depths of it. There's the imagery in La Cité de Cloche. Basically the hunchback stuff at the end with the fire and Esmeralda about to burn. You know, just casual burning someone in a Kingdom Hearts game. I think the music does potentially ruin the drama of that scene, but something else in this world actually is the crypt area. I mean, there's just piles of skulls and bones. It's quite a creepy place to be in. I mean, how often does Kingdom Hearts let us go into a graveyard like this? Oh, right, yeah, okay, I get it, alright, there's a lot of times. But still, this is quite a realistic looking one, I guess. Oh, and something else that's not so creepy, but is a bit disturbing, is how Sora is so gleeful. For example, about killing Maleficent, as this comment shows.
Maleficent? Huh. She's toast. Huh? We might have had something to do with it.
Or when he's challenging the rest of the organization after destroying Demyx, and it's like, wow, okay. Sora's 15 here and he's kind of like glorifying killing, basically. I know this isn't a real world or whatever, but it's just weird to think about his childhood has consisted of this. The dive to the heart, yes, I'll admit there's a slightly unsettling vibe to it. Your friends being in your dream and asking these cryptic questions, you would wake up from that a bit like, okay, what? Of course, you also have the build up to Darkside and the ramp that leads up to there. It disappears behind you if you look around behind, so that's a bit creepy too. You've got some voice telling you you're going to open a mysterious door one day. Oh, and as I mentioned in one of my other videos, Sora's shadow, before it turns into Darkside, has a really creepy face. Like, it doesn't look like Anti-Sora or Shadow Sora from Neverland. It's its own thing with his face, but it's really weird. Ever since I saw that for that video, I've thought, oh, that's really disturbing actually. Oh, and on the first video I talked about Ansem when he's just a wandering heart and he's in his robe. And we got to see it again in Melody of Memory, and it looked a bit funny and weird because he was in the final world, so he was so well lit. So it was less creepy than he would be in the dark. But in a way it was more weird because you can see how just weirdly shaped this thing is. And I don't know, it just makes it more creepy when you think about actually seeing him in dark areas, right? Oh, so I think that's about it. There were some comments, of course, that were things I already mentioned in the previous 2 videos, but it was cool seeing a lot of the things that other people found creepy. A lot of the time these things aren't directly creepy, but it's more about when you think about stuff. Probably think about stuff more than you really should. But still, it's fun to think about things in a deeper way, and when you do, sometimes you unlock some of the creepy aspects of it. Oh, and yes, this is the last video I'm doing of this type, at least for a long time. But it was quite fun to make. I enjoyed doing this new format where I don't just necessarily split it into 10 things, because that gets a bit arbitrary, right? I mean, why just 10 things? And then I have to make sure they're all worthy of being there, right? So I can't include the smaller stuff. Like on one of the old videos, I could have never included Santa Claus. Right, that's not worthy of a 1 out of 10. But here I can just talk about it because I'm just flowing from one topic to the next. And I quite enjoy that, to be honest. I'd like to continue this format of video for other topics too. And if you didn't comment on that post, you can still feel free to comment on this video and say your own creepy things that you think Kingdom Hearts has done, disturbing things, unsettling things, anything like that that you can think of, and we can have a nice big comment section all about the creepy aspects of Kingdom Hearts. And now, as it's the end of the video, I have an announcement to make. Not going to make a separate video for this because it's on the smaller scale, but I have a Patreon. I don't expect anything out of anyone, it's a completely optional thing. But if you do want to go there and support me, I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, there are certain rewards for doing the different tiers, right? There's all that stuff. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Patreon by now. So you can follow the link in the description if you want to check that out. And if you do end up subscribing, I'd be very thankful to you, and I hope you enjoy the rewards of the tier that you've selected. I know it's a bit of a weird time right now, so if you're financially unstable, definitely don't pay into that, okay? Really don't need to use your money on something better. But if you do have anything spare, and you just like to support the channel a bit, it's there for you. And I also have a second channel where I upload playthroughs and that sort of thing. So that's everything plugged without giving myself an electrical shock, hopefully. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.